going to be a brilliant night up north in Newcastle and a brilliant Geordie night in London, as I'm pretty sure, Shaka, the celebrations will continue into the end of the night or the early hours of the morning. Now, if you have a look at the Newcastle performances in finals, their last trophy, as I said, in 1969. In quite a few, they've made it. Shaka, we were talking yesterday about how this cup, of course, they came really close against Manchester United, but they fell short there, even though many felt like they were the better team against United in that final. But they've come back and they have beaten what many would say is an even bigger fish in Liverpool today. All right, let's welcome in Frank Leboeuf as well to talk about this one, but I definitely have to start with Stevie Nicol. Stevie, a bit subdued. We spoke about this yesterday. We looked at the odds. Liverpool definitely favourites. Why wouldn't you choose Liverpool as favourites in this one? You were a little hesitant, but you still couldn't find a way for Newcastle to get in. Are you a bit surprised with how Liverpool really couldn't string anything together to get it?
Well, having watched the game and thinking about what's happened over the past couple of weeks, then you kind of come to the realisation that Liverpool just had nothing left, to be quite honest. And Newcastle, on the other side of the coin, went about it the right way. They swarmed over Liverpool, never let them play out from the back, made them kick it long. And of course, Dan Burn, 6'7" against Jota, or even Salah against Livramento. Liverpool couldn't get out, couldn't get any possession, and really, Newcastle shouldn't have been hanging on at the end of this game. They were miles ahead of Liverpool, and Liverpool just didn't have the legs in order to be anywhere close to their best. And as I said, Newcastle deservedly won, but I think more than anything, they went about it the right way. They were just physically superior to Liverpool, and it showed. They were first to every second ball. Well, they were first to most of the challenges anyway, and Liverpool just struggled from start to finish, pretty much.
Well, the physicality of the game is something Arne Slot spoke about after it, Shaka, and he said that they just couldn't match up to Newcastle's physicality. But are you accepting that as an excuse? Because ultimately, this is still Liverpool. We were talking about them winning the quadruple, and now it's down to one trophy, I'll say, albeit the Premier League, but still.
Can I just jump in there, Shaka? Think about it. You know, during the game, the commentator actually nailed it. Liverpool have played 9 more games than Newcastle up to this point. Now, some might go 9 games, but we're talking about 9 midweeks off. That's the difference in this. For me, that's the difference in this game. Newcastle, you could tell they had 9 midweeks off, and Liverpool hadn't, because there was nothing in Liverpool's legs, and Newcastle could have ran all day. And at the end of the day, that's what it was about. It wasn't about Newcastle playing beautiful, silky soccer. Newcastle went about it the right way, and that physicality that they had that Liverpool didn't possess at this stage of the season is ultimately the biggest difference in the two sides.
I thought Stevie's been subscribing to the Real Madrid school of excuses.
I absolutely get it, and you're right. Nine midweek games more than the opponent is telling. I think, most importantly, the last 2 midweek games against PSG certainly proved to be the difference. I don't think anybody would argue, and certainly you just have to look at the league table to understand that Liverpool are the best team in English football, certainly have been during the course of this season. But without question, Newcastle could not handpick this date for a final better. Given what you saw over the last couple of weeks in the Champions League with PSG, just kind of given some of Liverpool's own loss of momentum. And I don't think Liverpool, over the last 2 months, have been anywhere near as good as you saw from Liverpool, certainly in the first half of the season. Newcastle recognise that. And I think the biggest current concern for Newcastle is that nearly 60-year wait. How much of that pressure would this group of players feel on their shoulders? The truth is, this is just about the same team that lost the final 2 years ago. They have that experience. They're better for it. They recognize the moment, most the point, the moment around Liverpool and what it means for them, what it means to them. Because while you could talk about the pressure that Newcastle were under, not lifting a title in so long, if at the start of the season you told Liverpool one of the titles that were the 4 that you're competing for, you have to do without, nobody really cares about the Carabao Cup for them.
Yeah.
Well, it means an awful lot, and the scenes at the end kind of showed exactly how much it meant for Newcastle. So there's a lot at play, a lot at stake for both these teams. And I thought you saw that during the course of the 90 minutes. Now, while we can look at all sorts of different scenarios and who played more games, etc., I don't think there's anybody that will challenge the better team on the day one. Newcastle were the better of the two teams, and they won the game, despite how nervous it was in those closing few minutes.
Well, similarly to Atletico de Madrid that we've been talking about, it's been a tough week for them, of course, how they got out in the Champions League. Liverpool as well got out of the Champions League. Luis Garcia had told us a few days ago he wasn't sure how Atleti would have been up mentally to the challenge that Barca would have posed today. Stevie, do you see that Liverpool probably mentally also were kind of having that hangover from how they were dumped out of the Champions League?
I'm really not so sure. I think obviously having a tough week and losing the way they did to PSG is hard on you mentally, but I think overwhelmingly the problem was what was lacking in Liverpool's legs. You can look at this game and people will say, well, did they go about it the right way? Did Slot pick the right team? Quite frankly, sometimes there's just not an answer. Sometimes you're in a place where, regardless of what choice your team is, regardless of the way you want to play, the opposition are better than you because of circumstances. And this circumstance was absolutely as good as Newcastle played at times. The circumstance around this game was more about who had what in the legs. And so for Arne Slot, I don't think he can look at himself and say he's gotten anything wrong. The circumstance dictated that Liverpool didn't have it in the legs, Newcastle did, and Newcastle 100% took advantage of it and thoroughly deserved to win.
One interesting thing in talking about what people have in their legs. Now, an interesting stat about Mo Salah is that he had 0 attempted shots and created 0 chances in this final. That's the first time in his career at Liverpool whenever he's played 90-plus minutes. Shaka, does that surprise you?
Yes, because it's Mo Salah we're talking about.
Yep.
And regardless of what kind of moment Mo Salah is in, it's Mo Salah we're talking about. And so ordinarily has he beating of whoever he's up against. Even in the days that he doesn't, even in the days that Mo Salah just can't seem to get into the game, he just has this one moment where he just drops inside on that left foot and puts a top corner. And you just say, this is just the most Mo Salah thing you've ever seen. But that was not an option for him. Up against Livramento, young left back for Newcastle United, who I thought did a wonderful job up against him. Given everything about the game, about the circumstance, about the emotion, young players coming into that, it's not that easy to handle. And while some could say, well, yeah, the naivety of youth, and I also get that, this is a big moment for the young player against somebody you know so much about, because it's Mo Salah, and did as good a job as could be expected. The stats kind of bear that out.
Shaka, what do you think about that Salah stat?
He's Steve. I'm Shaka.
Stevie.
Yeah. I mean, listen, when you're playing in a side that's struggling the way Liverpool did today, the people who are going to struggle the most to make an impact are going to be your forward players, and particularly Mo Salah. Didn't get the ball as often as he's used to, and then when he did, as Shaka rightly said, Livramento did a fantastic job on him. When he did get it, he closed him quickly. When he didn't make a challenge, he brought him into traffic. I mean, defensively, Newcastle were so solid and sound today. It was a surprise to me that Chiesa got an opportunity. That's how good Newcastle had been, certainly the two centre-backs today. So, yeah, I'm not surprised. The way the game went, it was always going to be tough for Liverpool's forwards to make any sort of impact on this game.
All right, well, let's bring in our Frank Leboeuf right now. Frank, I know you had some issues with some of Arne Slot's comments after the game, especially as it related to the first goal that Liverpool conceded. What was it?
Yeah, hi. Firstly, let me say that I'm so happy to see you, Alexis.
Oh, thank you. Someone is.
And secondly, yes, I was very surprised with this comment, because you know that you play a final against Newcastle. You know that they have very tall players, and Burn is the monster of all of them. You mark those players. You don't play zone against those players. And he said after, well, I never seen somebody heading the ball from so far and scoring. It already happened. I tell you, it already happened. And I played against players, they were capable of doing that. I'm sorry, that's the big mistake. I don't know nowadays why you want to not take responsible the players for the marking of the others, but it's what it is. They play zone, therefore nobody knows what he has to do except take care of his area, let's say, but everybody can come into and you cannot deal with that. And nowadays, you had to mark somebody, and I tell you, if the guy was scoring a goal, the coach would have come to me and say, what did you do? Because it's impossible. If you mark him, he cannot score. That's what happened. And I'm very, concerned about his philosophy of football in a way that to play against Bern, you have to mark him. You have no other choices, and it's been proven.
He played the percentage game. That's what Slot did. The percentage game is, I'm not going to change what we've done all season for one guy. And I'll play the percentage game that you generally don't see somebody scoring a header so cleanly, so powerfully from that far out. And that was the gamble that Slot decided to take. And it hasn't paid off. I guess the question now is, in the future, will he change it when you're playing against somebody or the opposition has somebody with that much height and that much power in the air? I guess that's the question. But for today, he played the percentages, and it kind of bit him in the backside.
Stevie and I had this conversation off air after the game, and I've never been a fan of zonal marking. I like to see players take responsibility and own up or live up to that responsibility. Now, while I get Stevie's point, and certainly you can make an argument around zonal marking with the stats, etc. Liverpool had a warning shot of this. Dan Burn came in off a one over the top of McAllister and headed, and Bruno Guimaraes just got a touch on it, and it luckily for Liverpool fell into the arms of Kelleher. So you don't allow him a second run at it. So while we could talk about how far out Dan Burn was and how good a header it was and whether anybody in history has ever scored a header from 12 yards out or not, he just ran over the top of McAllister. And whether you allow him a header from 12 yards or, again, different delivery, you allow him to run over the top of McAllister and head from 9 yards, it's the same thing we're talking about here. And Liverpool got away with it once. Nobody adjusted on the pitch to it. Nobody sent instructions from off the pitch to adjust to it. And then they pay the price. Now, Slot could frame it as, I've never seen a header as good as that. But Dan Burn running over the top of McAllister was certainly happened previously and would have happened all day long if Liverpool continued to allow it.
Well, a few weeks ago when we were doing our FA Cup coverage for Liverpool's game away at Plymouth, before we knew how that was going to end, Stevie, we were kind of speaking, especially with Dan and everybody, just asking me to ask the fans if they were very confident about Liverpool getting a quadruple, because at that point, it looked like it could have been a quadruple. Now, a few weeks later, oh, how times have changed, Stevie. But they are very much on course for one trophy. And I say one trophy, but it is the trophy that everybody in the UK would want, and that is the Premier League title. But is this one trophy enough, considering how Liverpool started under Arne Slot this season?
Well, not only is it enough, it's the trophy that counts the most. And it's certainly, for Liverpool, the trophy that counts the most. Having won it so many times and then only won it once in the last 30 years, there's no question at the start of the season, the most important tournament for Liverpool to win, even over the Champions League, was the Premier League title. And right now, it's still in their hands. And right now, it would take a calamity for them not to win it.
Let's bring in Frank, because I hear him chuckling there, Frank. What's your thoughts on this? Is the Premier League only enough, considering how Liverpool started with Slot?
I'm disappointed, I have to say. And it looks like that they lost their mojo since they have 12 points difference between them and Arsenal. And it's like now we get the trophy that we almost, like say, 95% sure that we're going to get it. They're losing all others in all other competitions. That's why maybe we feel like Paris Saint-Germain, the 2 games they should have lost. It's why today we feel that they should have lost. And there is no reason to feel that they're still into the game. They know that they have a big gap and they're very comfortable, I would say, in the Premier League, and they're going to win the Premier League. But it's sad to see and disappointing to see that they couldn't fight. And it's like they got it, they knew that they got it, therefore they let it go for the rest. It's my feeling. It's really, Stevie explained, since the beginning of the season, the biggest trophy is the Premier League. I agree with that, and I'm pleased for the rest that they're going to get it. But it's in a way disappointing that they couldn't fight for another trophy because of the quality that they have.
Shaka, do you feel that?
Listen, I certainly can't say to a former Liverpool player and Liverpool fan what feels right, what feels enough during the course of a season. But to Stevie's point, given Liverpool's struggles at the league, given how important that will always be to them as a football club, you sympathise. To your point, if 4 weeks ago, right before the Plymouth game, you asked every Liverpool fan, listen, you're only going to win one trophy this season, what would it be? Again, it would always be the Premier League. We've also kind of gotten into this romantic kind of way about us in covering this game, in that everybody's going to do a quadruple all of a sudden.
Yep.
Come December, whoever's sitting top of the Premier League, as long as they're still in the Champions League, or the quadruple is on. And we've seen some incredible teams over the years, whether you want to talk about Manchester United a long time ago, or the Manchester Cities of just a couple of years ago, they weren't able to get that quadruple. So and despite Liverpool's lead at the top of the table, if you're asking me, are this version of Liverpool as good as Manchester City 2 or 3 years ago? I'd say no. And if that version of City couldn't get the quadruple done, what leads me to think, other than just this romantic notion of somebody eventually doing the quadruple, what leads me to think that Liverpool would be the team?
Well, I think we definitely have to pay Newcastle their credit as well. We've spoken a lot about what's gone wrong for Liverpool in this game, and we haven't really touched that much on what went right for Newcastle. Yeah. But Shaka, just the significance of this, the last time that Newcastle won a major trophy, whether you want to call the League Cup a major trophy or not, it is silverware. And you were born in the same year the last time they did. We're aging you 56 years ago, Shaka.
I'm going to make it sound like that.
But how much? 56 years is still young. How much does this mean to Newcastle, to the Geordies, to everything?
Well, I will let these stories that come out over the next couple of years, or next couple of days, speak for themselves as to how important this is. To answer your initial question, Alexis, as to what went right, that's a pretty simple answer. Everything for Newcastle on the day. Again, you could not handpick this moment to play Liverpool if you had a crystal ball. That just worked right for Newcastle. And then even so, the suspension of Gordon, he's not included. Harvey Barnes comes in and puts in an incredible shift. You look at how good Newcastle were defensively, the contributions of Burn up at the other end, as we mentioned. Fabian Schär maybe might fly under the radar. Again, outstanding. Kieran Trippier, who'd come in for so much criticism a couple of years ago, comes into this team, does not put a foot wrong. His leadership, his experience, incredibly valued. Tonali, who had to sit out all of last season, outstanding all season long. I cannot sing the praises of Joe Linton and Graham Maris enough. Barnes has spoken about. Isaac just continues to write his story and his legacy with this football club. Murphy, another player who everybody feels was not good enough or would be replaced, but continues to prove himself a valuable ingredient. And lastly, I will say, we have questioned, we have questioned Newcastle, whether their manager was the right man for this moment, whether he was the right man to lead them to silverware, to continue to compete at the top of the Premier League table. And he absolutely has proven himself every bit worth it. And why the ownership stuck with him as they have. I couldn't be any happier for out of all of this, I couldn't be any happier for one person.
Well, Stevie, let me ask you one quick question, too, because ever since Alex Isak moved from Real Sociedad to the Premier League, he has definitely become such a hot commodity, one that has been linked with Liverpool. Should Liverpool now, after exactly seeing what he can do today, just go all out to try and get him this summer?
Short answer, yes. Yes, please.
Just leave him alone. Leave him alone, please. We've had this conversation.
Yeah.
Leave him alone.
Seeing as it's Sunday, twice on Sunday, Absolutely. Go.
Shaka's
You
not letting him
can't
go.
get him. You're not,
No,
You're
absolutely.
not getting
Let
him.
me tell you something.
But at what price at this point?
Exactly. If Eddie Howe had his way,
Yeah.
I think if the club, and by all accounts, there was some concern last summer because of Newcastle's financial position, having to move players and profit and sustainability and whatnot. So there was some concern. Newcastle were able to get it right in that regard financially at that point, and were able to keep hold of Alexander Isak. Kind of given how this season's gone, given the fact that Newcastle can now boast lifting silverware, especially if Newcastle finish top 5 and Champions League football comes on the back of that. As I say, Eddie Howe will do everything in his power. I just, not just Eddie Howe. They can't sell Alexander Isak at any price at this point. No.
If you see Shaka hanging out at St. James's Park this summer, chaining Alex Isak to the railings, you know why.
I'll be taking a collection.